don't remember the last time I heard one team this hot and bothered about a coach taking another deal.
The Jags have fired general manager Trent Baalke.
Hey, would you be interested now that Trent's out? What can we do to get you in the building?
Where the Jaguars are reportedly nearing a deal to hire Liam Coen as their next head coach.
Pete Carroll
will be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders.
Oh, we've been strong. We're just playing by the rules. You can't have a newcomer come in and steal the show.
The Jacksonville Jaguars fired general manager Trent Baalke. You did it. Good job, guys. 3 weeks too late, but you got the job done. Teflon Trent has been removed.
Better late than never, but it would have been better if it had happened when they moved on from Doug Peterson.
After, of course, it cost the Jags a few big names in their head coaching search. But that firing ultimately enabled Shad Khan to orchestrate one of the most bizarre but successful head coaching hires when he landed Liam, the Buccaneers now hate me, Coen, and give him the keys to the swimming pool. Liam had returned to Tampa Bay. We all believed he was set to be their offensive coordinator on a new 3-year contract that would have had him as the highest paid OC in the NFL. And then Liam got a call from Shad Khan that changed everything. The Raiders have inked a 3-year deal with Pete Carroll to be their head coach. That's a solid hire for the Las Vegas Raiders. Pete and Jim Harbaugh in the same division again? I will be pre-ordering my popcorn.
And they have never been able to escape one another.
The Raiders need a quarterback still, and guess who's a free agent this offseason? Yes, Russell Wilson. But there's even a darker horse candidate out there for the Raiders. Today, I want to walk you through the craziest coaching hire I've seen since Josh McDaniels. Liam Coen could be for Trevor Lawrence, what Ben Johnson is supposed to be for Caleb Williams, and if there is a football god, Russell Wilson will finish his career in the AFC West with the Raiders. I'm Brandon Perna. This is That's Good Sports. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to this YouTube channel. We're ready to take over the world. Today's episode is sponsored by Underdog and my code That's Good. We are 39 signups away from hitting 5,000 signups on Underdog. And at 5,000 signups, I get a big ass bonus. So help me get that big ass bonus. It would be sweet. These are my picks for the week. In my attempt to curse the Chiefs, every time I make a pick, it's wrong, so maybe I'm changing the outcome of games. These are my real picks. If you want to play daily fantasy or in pick'em games, do it at Underdog with my code That's Good. There's a link in the description. And of course, if we hit 7,500 signups and the Chiefs three-peat, I will go to Kansas City, attend the victory parade, and make a video of my horrible, miserable experience there. But only if we hit those 7,500 signups on Underdog, and you got some work to do to make that shit happen. The Jacksonville Jaguars have been stuck in this cycle of bad roster moves, coaching instability, and overall mismanagement for a while. And even getting the right guy was also mismanaged. One of the main culprits, former general manager Trent Baalke. While he wasn't a complete disaster in every way, his time in Jacksonville was filled with enough missteps to hold the team back for years. Now that he's finally out, the Jags have a chance to start fresh with Liam Coen. Did anyone, though, really believe Ben Johnson was going to hedge his entire career on the Jags, or that Aaron Glenn would turn down the Jets job for the gig in Jacksonville? No, I think Trent Baalke scaring those guys away just saved the Jags some time. Shad Khan does need to start doing his press conferences in person instead of Zoom. I'll give you that tip, Shad. When you blur out your background, we can only assume you've got something crazy back there. Shad, is it a mustache orgy? Shad, is it a mustache orgy in the background? Now, Trent Baalke did make a few solid moves as GM in Jacksonville. Drafting Trevor Lawrence first overall in 2021 was a no-brainer, especially when you look at the rest of that QB draft class. And snagging Brian Thomas Jr. in 2024 looks like a home run. Thomas is already proving to be a perennial Pro Bowl type receiver, the kind of guy who can take the top off of a defense. A philosophical difference from Urban Meyer, who tried to grind out the bottom. Now, there was also plenty of misses. The decision to draft Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson in 2022. That was and always will be a head-scratcher. Walker's fine, very good at times, but Hutchinson was an absolute force in Detroit before that scary injury, and it's hard not to think about what could have been if you're a Jags fan. Ironically, Lions fans are also thinking what could have been with Aiden. Now, I get that that was a weird draft, and Walker had and still does have upside, elite upside, I guess, but they got too cute and went for a positionless player with elite traits instead of the dominant edge rusher. There's a reason Detroit is where it is and why Jacksonville is what it is. And don't even get me started on Baalke's free agent signings. He threw around over $150 million in contracts, and what did the Jags get for it? Not much. Gabe Davis, Ron Darby, and Eric Armstead were supposed to bring some firepower, but instead they left the team with a big albatross in terms of contracts and very little to show for it. Gabe Davis scoring 4 TDs in that playoff game in Arrowhead was the worst thing to ever happen to the Jaguars. This kind of reckless spending left Jacksonville stuck with cap issues that will take some time to clean up. I mean, the Broncos have a little more cap space this year than Jacksonville, and that's with Russell Wilson accounting for $32 million in dead cap money for the Broncos. And Denver was a playoff team. The Jags are picking at 5. Baalke's real legacy in Jacksonville will be how much he scared off coaching candidates. Baalke's reputation around the league was not great, going all the way back to San Francisco.
Jed, you dismissed your general manager and coach because they didn't reach certain performance standards.
That's part of it.
Okay.
Basically a guy that gets in tight with the owner and does just enough to deflect blame and not get fired. He's kind of a Machiavellian figure in the NFL, if Machiavelli was also a fucking moron. Top tier names like Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn didn't even want to interview with the Jags. And Liam Coen straight up canceled his visit and returned to Tampa Bay. Now Liam played chicken with a 1 in a million proposition, and Shad Khan balked. The problem is that it was clear to everyone except Khan for far too long that Baalke was holding the team back. We all believed the Jags missed the boat and that they would settle for the scraps as the Cowboys, Saints, and Raiders still needed head coaches. I honestly thought Jacksonville might get Tom Coughlin back in the building as their head coach. If you're 2 hours early, you're also 2 hours late. He might be the only guy that could get Trevor Lawrence to cut his damn hair, you dirty hippie. But back in 2018, the Indianapolis Colts named Josh McDaniels as their head coach, right? Josh finally got his second chance after crashing and burning in Denver. And then McDaniels infamously bailed on the Colts job after a handful of assistants already accepted jobs to follow him to Indy. It was really unprecedented at the time, and it still is.
With Josh backing out, we were disappointed. Unquestionably, we were disappointed and surprised. We had agreed to contract terms. We had an agreement in place. We followed all the rules, did everything right.
In hindsight, it's actually hilarious because we all believed at the time that Josh returned to New England with the idea that he would be the successor to Bill Belichick. And now, after a stint with the Raiders, he is back as the Patriots offensive coordinator. After the Jags fired Baalke, Khan got to work. And I'm going to let Adam Schefter break it down from his appearance on the McAfee show.
I think there's two different sides of this. Liam Coen would tell you that he feels like even if there's a signed contract as a coordinator, it is within your rights to go take a head coaching job anywhere else you want. He felt like the Buccaneers, right or wrong, I'm just telling you what he felt like, the Buccaneers strong-armed him into this deal, and he signed the deal, and the Buccaneers would say, we made him the highest paid coordinator in NFL history, and then when we tried to figure out where he was, we could not find him throughout the course of the day on Thursday to get him to sign that contract. And they say that they reached out multiple times. He says he was in touch with Todd Bowles and informed him of his decision to interview with the Jacksonville Jaguars.
Now, Shad relayed the idea to Liam that he could make Him, one of the highest paid head coaches in the NFL, and that Coen could choose his own general manager.
And now instead of making $4.5 million, I've been told he's going to make Ben Johnson money, which is mid-teens.
There's not a single man in the NFL who would not take that opportunity. Life-changing money, and you get to pick your boss/football husband? Boys, I'm having the biggest gay wedding you've ever seen. Now, I understand the Buccaneers are furious, and I know the fans are upset because Liam was probably their next head coach in the waiting, right? If, when Todd Bowles showed he couldn't get the team over the hump in the playoffs, or missed the playoffs, Liam was slated to take over that team. The secrecy, too, of the second Coen meeting was also so Liam could keep his Bucs OC offer, and apparently so the Jags could satisfy the Rooney Rule. Which, yes, both of those things are pretty lame. This was the best secret plan involving a Coen since Fargo. And by the way, that one didn't end too well.
There's more to life than a little money, you know.
If Ben Johnson wasn't in this coaching cycle, Liam Coen may have been the hottest head coaching candidate. He took over for Dave Canales, right, who already raised the expectations for Baker Mayfield and the Buccaneers offense, and Liam made them a special unit. The Bucs offense was third or fourth best in points per game, yards per play, yards per carry, and EPA per snap. We were glazing Dave Canales for having the Bucs offense as slightly below average last year. We glazed Dave so much he almost relapsed. Trevor Lawrence, Brian Thomas, and Tank Bigsby are in for great seasons if Liam brings those offensive numbers with him. And just like the Bears, the Jaguars need to address their offensive line, specifically the interior, which needs to better protect Trevor Lawrence and open up the run game. But Coen is inheriting some nice pieces. Trevor Lawrence is the franchise, right? And the offense needs to be built around his strengths. We're not talking about a guy who's got some nebulous potential. This is a quarterback who got straight up screwed with Urban Meyers for a year, won a playoff game his second year in the league, erasing a 27-point deficit in the process, and has gone to the Pro Bowl. Trevor Lawrence should have been the ace up the Jags' sleeves in the coaching search. I think he's just as attractive of a prospect right now as Caleb Williams and Drake May. And by the way, those quarterbacks landed themselves the best head coaches in this cycle. The offensive schemes he's had to work with have been too conservative, too horizontal. The Jaguars need to open things up, let him throw deep, and take advantage of Brian Thomas Jr.'s ability to stretch the field. Lawrence has the potential to be one of the AFC's better QBs, which is a really high bar right now, and he has the right coaching system to finally get there. Fixing the Jags defense will take more work, but that's another episode. The real victim here, it's not the Buccaneers. The business of the NFL is ruthless. We know that. The guy I feel for is Baker Mayfield, who will now have his 8th offensive coordinator in 8 years. How little do NFL decision makers think of Baker if every time his offense succeeds, they believe it's because of his magical OC? Baker's a fucking kingmaker. It's time for Baker to steer the ship and take what is his, just like a real pirate. Moving on to Pete Carroll. The Raiders have signed Sneaky Pete to a 3-year deal with a 4th-year option to be their next head coach. The 4th-year option, of course, being, if you're still alive, the job is yours, Pete. I kid, but the AFC West now has the oldest grouping of head coaches in the NFL. We are the AARP West, and we will beat the shit out of you with our hover-rounds and walkers. When Dan Campbell says,
wear a diaper before some of these games,
he is now talking about our head coaches, and it's because we can no longer control our bowels. Now, I think this is a very solid B+ hiring for the Raiders. They may not have been able to entice Ben Johnson, but they get a guy who knows what the hell he's doing. Plus, the Raiders have $95 million in cap space to go with the 6th pick in the draft. Pete has 170 wins to 120 losses as an NFL head coach. The AFC West now has an insane grouping of head coaches, and we get the juicy Pete versus Harbaugh rivalry reignited. And speaking of juicy, I think the AFC West now has the market cornered on chewing gum.
Double gum, a double pleasure is way
Yeah, that's a young Pete Carroll with his twin in that commercial. The Raiders' last 2 coaches only lasted a year and a half. The Raiders have not produced successful coordinators or anyone who goes on to succeed in other places. You go to Vegas to die if you're a coach. I think Pete can change that. I believe Pete brings back optimism to Raider Nation. I think the Raiders' defense will get a boost with his return, and their offense won't be, how you say, dingo dung? Give the Raiders the same 2-year window we had here in Denver with Sean Payton, though. I think that's a realistic time frame for Pete and his impact. I think the Raiders have to pursue a quarterback in free agency, and I believe there is a dark horse candidate out there that fits with Pete. No, not Russell Wilson. No, not Sam Darnold. I'm talking about Justin Fields. In my heart of heart, I want Russell Wilson to return to the AFC West. That would be good for business. That would be good for NFL ratings, but probably not good for the Raiders. Russ had to learn the hard way that the grass is not always greener. I think he'd jump at the opportunity to play for Pete Carroll again, assuming the Steelers don't want Russell Wilson back. Then we've got Sam Darnold, assuming the Vikings don't franchise tag him or make him an offer he can't refuse. Sam feels like the most likely quarterback that would fit both what Pete Carroll and Tom Brady desire in an NFL QB. It really depends on how harshly they grade Sam's performance in his last 2 games from this season. I think if Sam is going to leave Minnesota, the Raiders also make the most sense for him, especially if the Raiders aren't going to push for a quarterback in the draft. But if anybody knows how to overpay for a quarterback you're uncertain of, while also maybe drafting a late round gem, it is Pete Carroll, right? That said, Justin Fields is very similar to a younger Russell Wilson. He would be significantly cheaper than Sam Darnold, and at this point in his career still offers more of an upside than Russ. Pete wants his quarterback to be safe with the football, and he wants his offense to be run first. It's exactly what the Steelers' offense was doing while Fields was quarterback. The Steelers walloped the Raiders 32-13 last season. Justin Fields only threw for $145, but he rushed for 2 touchdowns, and he and Najee Harris combined for 165 yards on the ground. Hell, bring Najee with Justin to the Raiders because Najee feels like a Pete Carroll running back. Fields threw just 1 interception in his 5 starts with the Steelers. He would handle the situation very well if the Raiders also drafted a quarterback. Through 4 NFL seasons, Fields has seen it all, and like Darnold this last season, I think Justin would welcome the chance to be a bridge quarterback with a guy like, say, Shedeur behind him in the waiting. Pete is also the right head coach to properly manage and cultivate that situation, even if the NFL requires him to wear a life alert necklace at all times. And that's it for today. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel, That's Good Sports. I will be live streaming the Bills-Chiefs game on Sunday, so come back, hang out with me, and enjoy championship weekend, even if you're not feeling like a champion, okay?